this chart, can everyone see this, probably? This is a model of families today, and families at any time, actually. But it's based on the work of Dr. Yuri Bronfenbrenner, who was from the University of Rochester. He was a psychiatrist. And he said we need to understand that everything in life is about context. Everything is about that snapshot. For the photographers that are here, it's based on the snapshot of where we are in our life. And then what are the relationships that we have? The spiritual relationships, the physical relationships, the emotional relationships, the financial relationships, all the relationships, all those other factors that affect and can impact negatively who we are. Think of family values. Now, a number of us may remember the discussion of family values and how a vice presidential candidate was poo-pooed. He was ridiculed because he was talking about family values. He was Ronald Reagan's vice president, if I'm not mistaken. And family values is actually a very essential part of who we are, because what we hold as important to us is based on our family experience. And when I say family, it does not necessarily mean an intact family, a bionuclear family where you have a mom and a dad who are the actual blood parents of a child. But whoever is in our lives, raising us, giving us guidance, those are the people that really are responsible for many of the values that we have and that we have today. In fact, I remember attending a seminar a number of years ago, and it was an all-day seminar, and the only thing that I walked away from that seminar with was this concept, that whenever you may be in the heat of an argument, and most heated arguments are based on sex, drugs, and rock and roll. They're based on sex, religion, and politics. Those have emerged as the most sensitive and fragile issues that can divide, if not cause, damage. But whenever you should be in an argument and you want to get out of it, you ask, Ed, is it the truth or is it what you believe? Think about that. Is it the truth or is it what you believe? And that will likely have you thinking that what you believe may not be true. So why do you believe it? Because you don't know a difference. So we should all take time to be mindful of who we are, what we are, and our relationships to others. And I often like to start off any kind of presentation by looking at the center of a family. And when we think of family, we normally think of children. It's the most immediate thing that comes to our mind. So if we look at the child is the most helpless in most cases because of their age, their inexperience, their lack of intellectual capacity, the lack of understanding of the world, just the fact that they haven't the experience and the knowledge of self-care, of understanding. And this, by the way, are the features that a young man carries until they get married at age 26. But if you look, the center is the child. Then you have, who are the parenting influences? Usually a mom and a dad, could be a single parent, could be a blended family where you have a step parent involved. There are siblings. But when you take a look at how a child functions, they usually have a sense of community, whether it's next door neighbors, neighbors' children, it could be siblings that they have. blended families become more complicating because there's so many new people who have already had likely some experiences and growth before coming into a new setting. The social network includes the place of work, place of worship, and the school where one will spend most of their waking hours during the day. These all constitute influences that affect a child and, by the way, affect a parent. You probably know, and those who are educators may recall that a parent, will call and say, in defense of their child, my child doesn't have to do their homework. It's your responsibility. You can't keep them after school. They have responsibilities at home, or you know what? You should punish my kid because I don't have time to. You got to teach them a lot. I mean, in Florida, I understand there's still a statute that says a teacher can spank a child.
Don't even try.
I tried 3 times and got away with it. No. But when you look at the influences on a child, it's outside the family. Look at the role of television. Look at the role of radio and music and media. Those have been criticized since the 60s, the late 60s, 1960s, and the early 70s. There have been attempts to regulate the nature of TV shows, the content of TV shows. If you know All in the Family, are there people here that know the program All in the Family? That was landmark and pivotal. Why? Because it revealed so much about people and our values, which in fact, for many, were based on bias, based on hatred, based on prejudice. Yeah?
Did you know that I grew up with Carol O'Connor?
Yes, I did. Yes, I did. And did you know that the producer, what's his name? Norm Lair is my mother's cousin. I wrote him twice. I haven't heard from him.
He was nothing like that. He was nothing like her. He was the total
Yeah.
opposite. He was a total sweetheart.
And a Shakespearean actor, if I'm not mistaken, originally. But it was that program, and clearly the commitment of the actors to create character of what was so characteristic and still characteristic of our society. Our society hasn't been more divisive as it has been now, probably in the last 30 years, certainly since the 70s. And maybe that's 40 years. But I wanted to point that out, that, all of you, and I'm so happy for what you've shared, because what you've shared is that, you have commitment to helping improve, bottom line, child outcomes. That is the bottom line. I was a biology major for the first 2 years of college. And the only thing that I remember learning from that was ontogeny recapitulates phylogeny. In other words, a species continues when it replicates. But children are like the parents, and the grandchildren are like their parents, and so on. And so what you believe and what you teach your child and how your child is reared is going to maintain the values and the behaviors. Talk about domestic violence. They're going to repeat those behaviors because that's what they know. And apparently that's what they value. So you're going to be dealing with a number of issues. And what I'd like to do now, James, if you can kind of follow me over here for a second. Thank you. What I want to bring you to the agenda, which we're a bit behind on, which is it's all right with me. Because what we're doing now is really important. But actually, we're not doing too badly. We're going to break actually in just a moment. But what I would like to tell all those who are viewing and who are here today is that the role of the Toby Center is based on what was my vision which was based on the research I had gleaned over the years, and based on my work in Washington, D.C., where I helped create the largest network of supervised visitation locations in the country. We had nearly 40. And I co-wrote the curriculum and training. That has evolved. If I look back 18 years ago and compare it to today and to what we're doing and how, there are some differences, because our work is a bit different than what it was 15, 18 years ago. And that also is because of the research that has been produced in our society. It's also because of the findings of those people in the field, our mental health counselors, our therapists, and what they've been dealing with for the last 25 years. As divorce has become much more, I don't want to say popular, but much more frequent. By the way, the marriage rate as a factor of divorce is nearly twice that of the divorce rate being the inverse, about 1/2 of the married rate. Whether they see a trend going down, it's immaterial. The fact is that divorce is huge. And also, the fact that parents split, people that have been living together without, the canopy of marriage, but who have been living together, had children together, but have split, and now they want to have access to the child. That creates some more difficulty, because then they have to prove that they are the biological parents. As I was speaking with Ed in the vehicle coming up this morning, this idea that I have had for the Toby Center, which is not so unique an idea, but it's to bring peace to a family through allowing and maintaining access between a parent and a child over time, strengthens their bond, which is great. But you, coming from the field, coming from academia, coming from experience, may have ideas for what else the Toby Center can do within school systems, school districts, within a community, and anything that you believe is something that we ought to consider. I invite you to share that. And if we feel jointly that this is something that the Toby Center can support, it'll be your baby. Very entrepreneurial. Very entrepreneurial. Why? Because we have to move with society. We have to see what are the needs that people have, what are the needs that children have. How about the politicians and the policy makers? What do they see as important, or what are they missing? One of the pieces missing from the Toby Center has been advocacy. I was an advocate for many years. I was also a program director for many years, and still am. But in D.C., I worked with David Levy, who was probably the most important person to create joint custody, now called shared parenting, in this country. Through his work and our lobbying with policymakers in Capitol Hill, we were able to get laws considered in nearly 30 states for joint custody. David passed away 2 years ago, December, unfortunately, but he's still here. Through your work and through the work of all organizations that are seeking to make peace for families and to help improve outcomes for children. So I want you to know that we're very, very flexible. I see this as a very flexible organization, but we have requirements. We have requirements, and by the way, in Florida there are guidelines and requirements for supervised visitation, which includes 12 hours of classroom training, 12 hours of field training, and then ongoing instruction once a year, particularly in respect to domestic violence. And this is a state mandate, although it's not state law, but it's what the courts expect. And I am proud to say that the Toby Center, is a member of the Clearinghouse on Supervised Visitation, which is based at FSU in the School of Social Work. That is the preeminent international resource on how supervised visitation is to be conducted, and also involved in the incredible research for many years in this field. And also the Supervised Visitation Network, which is a database and a training organization for those involved in supervised visitation. And as we're able to, we'll have more funding, and we might be able to send several of you to go to certain advanced trainings.